Good evening. We're going to be reading one of my favorite passages in the entire Bible, and this is when Jesus walks on the water. We're in Matthew chapter 14. We're going to begin in verse 22. Let's begin. Immediately after this, Jesus made his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. And this was right after he fed the 5,000. So you have to go back and look at yesterday's lesson for that part. Let's continue. Verse 23. Afterward he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile the disciples were in trouble far away from land, and a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, or the fourth watch, as some scriptures say, Jesus came to them walking on the water. When the disciples saw him, they screamed in terror. They were thinking he was a ghost. But Jesus spoke to them at once. "It's all right," he said. "I'm here. Don't be afraid." Then Peter called to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you by walking on water." "All right, come," Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water toward Jesus. But when he looked around at the high waves, he was terrified and began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. Instantly Jesus reached out his hand and grabbed him. "You don't have much faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" And when they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped. Then the disciples worshipped him. "You really are the Son of God," he exclaimed. Let's read a few more verses, and this will finish up chapter 14. After they had crossed the lake, they landed at Gennesaret. The news of their arrival spread quickly throughout the whole surrounding area, and soon people were bringing all their sick to be healed. The sick begged him to let them touch even the fringe of his robe, and all who touched it were healed. Now, I want you to go back and look at verse 30. Now, this is when Peter went over the side of the boat, started walking on water toward Jesus. I want you to notice what happens. And this is why this is one of my favorite passages, because it's so true. When Peter looked around at the high waves, verse 30 says, he was terrified and began to sink. Now, think about that. When did Peter start to sink? It was at the exact moment that he took his eyes off of Jesus. That's so true. So if you feel like you're sinking today, what are you focused on? Is it Jesus? Or is it the trouble that's in your life? God bless you this evening.